All right. So we should all be able to see. Nelson, can you confirm?
I can confirm that I think I'm seeing your presentation screen and not your main
Oh,
screen.
well, let's see if I can flip that around then. Give me just a second.
Ooh, you are a fancy man. You know that trick. Good
Hey, I
job, my
do
man.
know. You can tell I've been doing a lot of WebExes here recently. So now
Swap
you
rows
should
and
see,
top.
yeah, there we go. So now we should be swapped around. Is that good? I am in presentation mode.
You're rocking, man. Go get it.
Okay. So, man, I tell you what, to follow that group is going to be a hard hurdle. And I only have a few minutes, but hopefully it's going to be a fun ride. I do appreciate um, being asked to participate today. Today's topic is, of course, data literacy. We've heard a lot about it. Going to dive into that for just a moment. But first, I want to thank once again Nelson Davis, Karen Hinson, my wife, Jennifer Lisborg, for asking me to participate in today's ATUG meeting. And thank you, ATUG members and your bosses for participating. So for those of you that might be seeing my image at the very first time, you're going, man, he looks familiar. Um, but I can assure you I was not a singer from REM. I never hosted a late night talk show host or a late night talk show. And this one's near and dear to my heart. No, I am not the ASL interpreter for the governor of Georgia, even though that picture probably looks more like me than anything else. I used to run ATUG, and more importantly, I guess, here way back in 2009, I was a founding member of ATUG. So I love ATUG, everything that it's done for me, both professionally and personally. The relationships that I have made are just absolutely off the chart. So let's talk a little bit about data literacy. But first, I want to kind of bring you to that point. So a couple of weeks ago, I think we all watched SpaceX, the Dragon return, Demo 2 return from the International Space Station. And, you know, I started really thinking it was kind of a nostalgic moment for me, at least, because we haven't seen something splash down in the ocean in quite some time. All through the 80s and 90s, we were we saw the shuttle program, but seeing something splash down in the middle of the ocean like that was kind of cool. And it got me thinking about my childhood. Now I'm probably a little older than most, but I watched the Apollo program, and of course I was watching Apollo 11 when it took astronauts into space and then actually landed 2 men on the moon. But as much as this is, there's a lot of technology behind this, I want you to focus on just really one picture here. And I'm going to blow this one up. This is the Saturn V rocket that's launching. It's, just a couple of seconds into its launch. But the thing what I want you to focus is right here. That is either a 1968 or 69 Oldsmobile 442. And right next to it there is, once again, from the same era, a Chevelle Super Sport. Now, it just didn't happen that there was some kind of a classic car show that was occurring on that Wednesday of the Saturn V launch. This because it was July 16th, 1969, when we sent men first into orbit and then into space and then finally destination the moon 50 years ago. And that kind of got me thinking about technology, because the brilliance behind the Saturn V and the Apollo program was just way ahead of its time. And I started thinking about calculators. In 1969, the first Texas Instruments calculator was still 3 years away. Think about that. We were still doing everything, by longhand. Microwave ovens. What would I do without my microwave oven? It was not introduced until the late 70s. So we were almost 10 years away from a microwave oven. Remote controls, they were out in the 1950s, but it didn't really become popular until 1980. And of course, we didn't even think about Alexa. So, I mean, that's where the technology was at that point. So I wanted to compare this mammoth Saturn V program to something that we could all understand today. And I thought, well, what could I compare it to? Well, let's compare it to an iPhone 11, okay? Something that we can all hold in our hands. So to give you some just kind of a basis, the latest phone, the latest iPhone has 4 GB of RAM. That is more than 1 million times more memory than the Apollo computer had in RAM. 1 million more times in the palm of your hand. The iPhone has 512 gig in read-only memory, ROM memory, which is 7 million times more than that of the guidance computer. Finally, you'll all appreciate this. The processor itself, the thing that actually did the work, the processor ran at a blistering speed of 0.043 megahertz on the Apollo 11 capsule. That's 0.043. The latest iPhones are estimated to run somewhere in the 2,500 megahertz range. That means that your iPhone in your pocket is 100,000 times has more processing than the Apollo 11, which sent man to the moon. So, golly, you think, man, with all that technology in our fingertips, why do we still continue to struggle with making data-driven decisions? Well, to add to that, last February, before COVID even began, this is 2019, Gartner released research stating that by 2020, this year, 50% of organizations will lack sufficient AI and data literacy skills to achieve business value. That's a troubling statistic. So let's talk a little bit more about the data literacy aspect of that statement. So what is data literacy? Now, I like this one. It's a little long-winded, but I like it because it is the definition that MIT uses, and I especially love the last part, and that is the ability to read, work, and analyze and argue with data. So employees, and notice they didn't say knowledge workers, so employees, everyone within the organization can contribute more to their roles and the organizations. Data literacy empowers workers to ask the right questions, to build knowledge, to make decisions, and to be able to communicate meaning to others. Now, I've shortened it a little bit to be just the ability to read, work, and analyze and argue with data. This is a simplified version of MIT's. But you're saying now, okay, I hear you, but I have data coming in from everywhere. I have ERP, I have CRM, I have production data, I have HR, finance. It's overwhelming and complex. And that is 100% all true. We live in an era of tremendous data velocity, the speed at which we can collect and it can be processed. But let's not make the consumption so complex, which we tend to do by overthinking it. And this, I'll go back to Rachel talking about being able to simplify explanations, or Steve, who said we want to make sure that we can simplify, and so that an executive can get the answer that he needs quickly without having to go through spreadsheets or have to sit there and ponder as to what to do. So before I get into the dashboard aspect, I want to bring something to that everyone can relate to. And that is your parking signs. Now, I live in a small town just south of Atlanta. We don't have parking signs that look like this. We have, it's don't park here under any circumstances, pretty easy. But where I see these parking signs are usually the places that I don't want to see parking signs. I either am renting a car in a big city and I'm not familiar with driving, or I have children in the back and I need to get off to the side of the road and take them to their destination. And so I have cars beeping at me going, make your decision. Are you going to park here or you're not? Well, I don't know if I'm going to park here because it's going to take me an hour and a half to identify whether or not I'm going to get a ticket or not. Wouldn't it be so much easier if we had something that would just tell you what the parking schedule is. Monday through Friday, you can't park here from 7 to 4. Saturdays, there's an hour or so, and then it's free parking throughout. It makes it so much simpler to take all of that information and put it into something really that's quite visual, and more municipalities are doing this. They're understanding, hey, we can't have this, all these signs. People don't know because they're actually making a decision on data that they can't even interpret. Well, we do the same with our analysis. And of course, we talk about spreadsheets. And to be honest with you, we are attempting to analyze data in the same manner we were doing in the 1980s when we had hundreds of rows of data. However, today we have millions, tens of millions, or in the case I've seen Mark Jackson present from Piedmont, billions of rows of data on nothing but temperature readings from all 11 of his hospitals. There's no way to analyze that in this type of format. Now, here, and I use this all the time, we have 24 rows by 12 columns of data. That's 288 data points. If we were all in the room together, the first thing I would ask is, how many people would consider this big data? I'd ask you to raise your hand, and there would be nobody that raised their hand. I ask the same question of Emory and Georgia Tech students when I'm giving a workshop. And once again, their answer is always a resounding no, this is not big data. And then I ask the stunning question, how many nines are in this data set? And I sit there and wait and wait and wait. And finally, after 30, 45 seconds, somebody will say 23. And then somebody on the other part of the room, 24. And the other one's, no, 27. The answer is wrong. And these are smart kids. They're in there, they're competitive, they want to be able to raise their answer and get the answer right. And more often than not, it takes a long time to make that to perform that analysis, and then they usually get the answer wrong. So all I had to do, speaking to Steve's point, was kind of make a highlight table. And now they can easily go and quick, and everyone's going to get the answer right on this. They're going to say 25, and they're going to do it in about 5 seconds because they can see real quickly how many nines are out there, because we've made that, we've kind of pronounced that. But that answers the one question, because now I want to know, well, how many 12s are there? How many 11s? What's the comparison? We know now that there's 25 nines, but where does that compare to the other numbers? So what do? In the world of Tableau, we visualize this data. And once again, to Steve Wexler's point, probably 90% of us would use a bar chart. You can see here that let me get to the right monitor. So right here we have, there's Mr. 9 right there, and you can see he's ranked 5th. Okay, and that number 11 had 34 instances, and this, maybe even using a tree map, now we see that not only 11 had 34 instances, but it represents about 12% of the data. So you're able to answer more than just the one question. So how do we become data driven? And I'm gonna give you, there's a number of, and people have hit upon this, and I have given everything there, and you'll see the 2 C's of data literacy and the 5 C's of data literacy. I have a little bit more than that, but I've given a lot of thought as to what my perception of data literacy is, and this is with about 20 years within within BI space. The first is curiosity, just simple curiosity about the data. When we hired people, we knew that we could train them on technology. We asked them, are you curious about the data? Do you want to know what this data set is perhaps trying to say? My former CFO, Ian Crabtree, always challenged me with a very simple question. Find something within the data that I don't already know. We know what sales were, day over day sales. What should we be looking at margins? Is there a specific subset within those sales that we might be able to monopolize because the margins are better? So that answers the question of, yes, you should be curious about the data, but the data that you present should be actionable. Challenge. And we talked a little bit about this too. Challenge the data. And this is more from both the analyst and from senior management. When was this updated? Are there outliers that were skewing the data? How would you rate the accuracy of this data? But the one thing I want for you to keep in mind is that you cannot be held hostage waiting for the perfect data set, because I've got news for you. I have never seen a perfect data set. I was just looking at a data set that has been out regarding COVID now since February. We're more than 120 days in, and they were misreporting a state because there was nothing that differentiated the state. And the reason this is kind of personal for me is because they didn't differentiate the state of Georgia with the country of Georgia. And so when aggregated, you were actually aggregating data both from the state of Georgia and from the country of Georgia. Now they have since had that fixed, but they went about 150 days where nobody challenged them on that. So it's important to challenge the data. Charles Babbage said this: errors using inadequate data are much less than those using no data at all. So use the data at hand. You still have to make that kind of gut decision. Be creative. And I love this because my first opportunity to attend a Tableau conference was 10 years ago. I've attended 10 conferences in a row. And I got to sit every morning and eat breakfast with Stephen Few. And his quote was, numbers have an important story to tell. They rely on you to give them a voice. Communicate. And once again, Rachel hit upon this. You've got to be able to communicate your results. You've got to be able to communicate your process to management in an effective way that they understand. And I love this quote because everybody knows who made this quote, Albert Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. You've got to be able to, whether it's a data model, whether it's a visualization, you've got to be able to explain your numbers. I love this one. Commit to running meetings that are data driven. Scrap the scripted PowerPoint presentations, run meetings on a visualized data. And finally, collaborate. Do what you're doing right now. Reach out to other people within ATUG. Reach out by joining a group on the Tableau website. It is amazing how many people, not only within your own organization, want to share what they have learned. They want to share it with others even outside of your organization. So I'm going to leave with just a couple things. McKinsey has been doing a lot of analysis over the summer, and basically the surveys they're conducting saying it has forced every company into a massive experience as to how to be more nimble, flexible, and fast. People are working from home. They've got to be able to make quick decisions that are accurate. And from that, what the CEOs are saying from that same study is we have removed boundaries. This is a perfect time. This is that we are now at a crossroads where we can do this. They are removing boundaries and silos in ways they never thought were possible, and they are adopting technology now in days, something that it would have taken years to do pre-COVID. And this is probably my most favorite quote from a CEO. They didn't mention his name, but decision making accelerated when we cut the BS. We make decisions in one meeting, limit groups to no more than 9, and we have banned PowerPoint. So a couple of points of reading. I'm not going to ask you to, run out and purchase statistics and probability books. That's data science. That's not what this is about. Here are 3 fun reads: Factfulness by Hans Rosling, Freakonomics. It gives you a different way of looking at and understanding data, and then Avoiding Data Pitfalls by Ben Jones. 3 great books that I would encourage you to read. I'd also encourage you to visit the Tableau website, as well as the Salesforce and Work.com, have all kinds of great information about this subject, as well as trying to get back to work in a safe manner. So with that, I want to say thank you for having me. Please stay safe, and I look forward to connecting with you all soon.